I wanted the kids to get the Did you hear my tummy just growl? Hi everyone, my name is Tia. I want to tell you about the books I've been reading lately. This summer I read 28 books and some of them are really good and some of them were god awful. Now, do you love how I've been unhauling my book collection so I could avoid cramming books in between shelves like this? And I've accumulated so many books lately that I'm simply reverting back to the system of cramming books in those said spaces. Yeah, I love that too. Just ignore that for now. So let's start off with my biggest genre, which is mystery. I've been trying to find books that replicate the feeling of Mary Kubica's Local Woman Missing. I have yet to find something that I love that much. Let's start off with The Chain. This had so much potential for me, but I was so disappointed in it. Essentially, your child gets kidnapped and the only way to get your kid back is to go kidnap someone else's kid. Welcome to The Chain. Isn't that so messed up? I wanted to like this so badly. The pacing is so good. It keeps you at the edge of your seat, but near the end, the storytelling gets so clunky, like legitimately bad, that I ended up being just turned off by the entire thing. I gave it a 3 stars. I read The Island, which was also okay. So you follow a man, a younger stepmom, a teenage daughter, and then a younger son. They end up going on vacation and then they end up getting on this secluded island, and the shady island is kind of run by this equally shady hillbilly-esque family, and there's an accident. The family that's on vacation ultimately gets stuck on this island fighting to survive. I couldn't really get connected to the family besides the kids. I wanted the kids to get the Did you hear my tummy just growl? I really couldn't resonate with these characters. The pacing I felt like was kind of slow, which is weird because it felt constantly like a life or death situation. I was more finishing the story for the chaos of it all, and I gave it 3 stars. Just the Nicest Couple by Mary Kubica. So we've got Nina and Jake, and then we have Lily and Christian. Jake goes missing, so you follow Nina trying to uncover what the heck happened to her husband. You kind of get the feeling that somehow Lily and Christian are involved, but I don't think anything revolutionary happened with the reveal, the twist, but it did keep me engaged the whole time, and I really do love this author's writing, so I gave it a 4 stars. The Locked Door by Frida McFadden. You follow Nora, who is the daughter of a serial killer, and now Nora is under fire for potentially following in her father's footsteps. I definitely didn't expect the plot twist at the end. I was engaged the whole time. I honestly wanted to know what the hell was happening. Like, how did Nora get sucked into all of this? 4 stars. Things We Do in the Dark. Paris Peralta is our main character, and she is arrested for her husband's murder. Her hubby is found bloody in the bathroom and she is holding the razor over his body. And they're like, "Did you murder him?" And Paris is like, "I don't remember." Imagine being her lawyer, okay? As you learn more about Paris, you learn more about her history and how she is not at all who she says she is. I strongly suggest looking into trigger warnings. The author touches on sexual assault, sexual harassment, pedophilia. It's a pretty heavy book. I was definitely invested in the story, even though I wouldn't say the characters are likable. It's more you feel so much sympathy and empathy towards Paris and what she's gone through. There's so much palpable character development throughout the story. I think I liked how everything played out, so 4 stars. Now we're gonna go into YA a little bit. So The Naturals, written by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, the author who wrote the Inheritance games. The FBI is essentially using this like undercover, underage group of kids who have this supernatural ability to tell if a person is lying, to read their body language, to solve these cold cases, and our main character decides to join the program because her mom's murder is actually still a cold case. It was just so YA. It was a little bit cringy at times. And I feel like this author has a thing for love triangles. That's not my favorite trope. She must like it personally, because literally, why was there a love triangle in this series? It felt so irrelevant, but I literally could not put this book down. I was so spooked about taking a shower because I didn't want to close my eyes and wash my hair without knowing who the killer was. Like, that's how much it scared me. So I gave it a 4 stars. I am definitely on my by Karen McManus Kick. I read 4 of her books in the last 2 months. You'll Be the Death of Me. You follow 3 high schoolers who essentially ditch school this specific day. While they're ditching class, they actually find the body of one of their classmates. One of your main characters might actually be a suspect in this murder. It just felt too YA for me. And I know that you have to suspend your belief a little, but this was too unreasonable for me. How could these kids be involved in this crime scene and just do the things they do and think the way they think? It was so infuriating. It felt like my gripe with One of Us is Lying, same author, the first book of hers. Those characters are just pigeonholed into one character trope and they're never given any character development. They're stuck to one personality trait. That's the pit that You'll Be the Death of Me fell into, where the characters are so one-dimensional that it honestly just feels boring. But I was invested enough in the crime to finish the story, see what happens. So I gave this a 3 stars. The cousins. Okay, this one is kind of weird. You follow these 3 cousins who are part of this estranged family. They get invited to their super rich grandma's estate to work at her country club or something, but it's a really out of the blue invitation because their grandma has not spoken to any of their parents for years. And the cousins don't really know each other that well. And I will say that the character dynamics at the beginning, you guys, they're so weird. Ugh. I almost DNF'd because I was like, where's this going? Why is it like this? But trust me, it gets better. I promise. There's a twist in the middle where you're like, thank God that this is happening. And you can kind of enjoy the story from there. You just watch everything unravel. You're learning the family mystery as these kids are. I found this to be really entertaining. You just have to trust me on the first quarter of the book. So I gave this a 4 stars. Nothing more to tell. To be honest, I had to Google this. I literally could not match this title to a book cover, the book synopsis, anything about it. That kind of tells you how memorable it was. I read this maybe 2 months ago. Bryn is coming back to her high school after being away because her 8th grade teacher was found murdered by 3 of her classmates, and one of those kids who found the teacher was actually Bryn's bestie slash crush who she doesn't speak to anymore. More truth comes to light. It comes into question the role that these kids actually played into the murder. I could not predict what was happening in this book. The author put pockets of suspicion in everyone, so you weren't really sure. Overall, I gave this 4 stars, but 2 months later, granted, I did read 30 books, but I did not remember this book at all. The last Karen McManus I have is Two Can Keep a Secret, which I think is what YA thrillers are meant to do. I was kept on my toes the entire time, and the ending left me with goosebumps. Like, I could barely walk outside my house in the dark after finishing this at 11 p.m. Twins have to move to this small town, and this small town is actually where their aunt was murdered like 20 years ago. Right when they move, of course, things start to go wrong in the town. Ugh, just the ending. But I gave this one 5 stars. I really, really like this. So let's talk about my general fiction slash lit fit books. I read 5 of them. Let's start with the weirdest one, just by looking at him. And the cover is stunning. I think a huge reason why I was so drawn to it was because I really loved the cover. Without giving so much away, it was very odd. It is very explicit. Literally, the first sentence of the book, we are discussing the boyfriend's genitalia. It is just the description of the... Do with that what you will. A white gay man living in LA with a physical disability, but I don't think it did anything groundbreaking. Oh, do you see the tail? I couldn't feel bad for the main character. He kept acknowledging that what he was doing was shitty, but then he continued to do the shitty actions, and it just gave me a headache. Like, I couldn't. Hello. So I gave this a 3 stars. And then really good, actually. I read this like in early June and I still smile thinking about it because I had so much fun reading it. I don't think everyone will enjoy this book. I think it takes a certain taste to read it. And I don't mean that in like a pretentious way at all. I mean like it was so much dry humor. And maybe it borderlined on too much dry humor. Our main character, Maggie, she is 29 and newly divorced from a very short marriage. She doesn't really love her job at all. She doesn't know where she's gonna go from here. She's very lost as to who she is and what she wants out of life. It was so refreshingly honest. And I don't want to call the tone desperate, but I do. Like, the character feels so refreshingly desperate that it was fun to read her self-discovery. It was almost sad, but I was happy reading it. Does that make sense? I can totally see how people wouldn't like this book, but I loved it. I give it 4 stars. Yellowface. We follow June. She is a white woman who steals her college friend Athena Liu's unpublished manuscript about the Chinese laborers in World War I when Athena Liu suddenly passes away, and then June takes on this ambiguously Asian last name and takes a manuscript and publishes it as if it is her own writing. Someone described it as watching a car crash that you can't look away from, and absolutely, it was a hot mess. I gave this a 5-star, and I think I've decided that I stand by the 5-star. I was gonna possibly bump it down to 4-star, especially going into more depth about the Goodreads reviews with Cindy's review about it. I love R.F. Kuang's writing. I think it is so captivating being in the head of her main characters. R.F. Kuang writes morally wrong almost too well. But I definitely agree with the sentiment that Yellowface was kind of used as like a mouthpiece for all the criticism that R.F. Kuang gets in real life about her writing. I think you cannot deny the parallels, and I wish that R.F. Kuang went into way more depth about classism, class privilege. It was right there, but that shallow level is really where we left it. That's all we got from her. But at the same time, I think it's a really great jumping off point for that discussion. He just rubbed his little face on my mic. Oh, there's Hero. The book is so skinny that I think if there were to be more nuanced discussion, the book would be as long as Babel was. There's like so much more discussion to be had about Yellowface, the fact that I keep wanting to talk about. I love that there's so many elements going on in Yellowface. I really liked my reading experience, so I gave it a 5 stars. Remarkably bright creatures. The fact that within the first 5 minutes of this audiobook that I pinpointed the audiobook narrator to be Marin Ireland, who is the same person who narrated the Beartown series by Frederick Bachman, is I'm so down bad, dude, for real. It's the same way that I can recognize Takahiro Sakurai, who is Miyuki Kazuya's voice actor from Diano Ace. I only need like 5 or 10 seconds in any anime that he's in, no matter if he is a side character. It's actually like bad the way that I can do that. Anyway, the fact that this is a debut is so amazing. I know for a fact that I'm going to be looking forward to anything that Shelby Van Pelt releases moving forward. And I'm actually scared of octopus, but this story follows Tova, who provides the janitorial services for her local aquarium, and her friendship with the aquarium's octopus, Marcella. Marcella is also a POV that you get, which is so fun. The way that she tells a coherent community story from multiple perspectives is beautiful. I love this. Remarkably Bright Creatures was such a heartwarming take on human nature and the importance of connection. I gave this an easy 5 stars. It is so beautiful, and I highly recommend it. It was so good. Never Been Better was an arc that I got on NetGalley. I think it comes out in early 2024. It's like the 3 musketeers of the psych ward. Once they're out of the psych ward, you follow Dee, Matt, and Misa, who are all best friends. Dee is in love with Matt, but Matt is engaged to Misa. Isn't that synopsis like so intriguing? Tilly, which is Dee's sister, is my favorite character for sure. I feel like every single character got at least a little bit of character development, even if they're side characters. It was such an important discussion of mental health, recovery, but it was still so lighthearted and funny at the same time. Premise itself is so absurd. It's a fun read despite the fact that it has some really important takes. There is so much love in these pages, so much vulnerability by the author herself. It speaks on romantic love, familial love, platonic love, self-love. Probably one of my favorite books of the summer, so 5 stars. And I only read one nonfiction this summer, How to Keep House While Drowning. It was a really realistic take on how to get your shit together by your own standards, set your own mental system while dealing with normal life circumstances, mental health barriers, and if you're taking care of children. A really important sentiment, and my favorite one that I took from this book, was no one's ever bullied or shamed themselves into better mental health. And I think I needed to hear that. You know, when you put it like that, it seems so absurd. No one's bullied themselves into better mental health. So we should practice more kindness with ourselves. And I just think that was so beautiful. I personally had a really good time, and I feel like there are definitely some important sentiments that I took from it. So 4 stars. I read 4 romantasy books. Now, I think my favorite genre is general fiction, and I always always enjoy a romance subplot. If the romance is the main plot, I think I get bored. I read A Ballad of Never After, which is the second book of the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, but I gave the first one a 3 stars because it took me forever to actually read it. I kept putting it down and I couldn't quite get into these characters. Ballad of Never After, I gave 4 stars. You follow Evangeline. She can no longer trust Jax because of what happened in the first book. Of course, she gets thrown into the mix of something life or death situation where really the only person she can trust is Jax. And Jax is growing on me. The fact that I'm excited for the 3rd installment makes me assured in that I did like this book. So 4 stars. Okay, and then A Court of Thorn and Roses, the ACOTAR series. So many people have recommended ACOTAR, and I definitely see why. For beginners to dip their toe in, I think this is so easily digestible. It's so fun. It allows people who aren't necessarily used to like the dumping of the world building and the magic system and the fantasy lore. We get to ease into it. You're kind of introduced to the courts as our main character Feyre is introduced to all the courts, so you're learning as she is because she is a human thrown into this new magic world, and you as a human reader are thrown into it with her. Feyre's character development, honestly, is what makes this series so good. She is such an easy character to root for. You want to see her get stronger. I want to see Feyre kick ass. I gave it 4 stars. And then I moved on to A Court of Mist and Fury, which is book number 2. And this one is so freaking good. 5-star read. I would describe this as Feyre's villain origin story, but in a good way. Hero origin story, but I don't want to call it that because there's Night Court and she's a badass. I feel like she learns so much about herself in book number 2. She finds family, she learns more about what she's capable of, she finds people who pushes her to be better, and you're consistently rooting for this main cast of characters to succeed. You want all of them to be happy. Oh my gosh. The last 5% of this book, I did a reading vlog and this was in it. I was shocked, dude. I was flabbergasted, and it makes you want to pick up the 3rd one immediately. However, I am now 85% into the 3rd book, The Court of Wings and Ruin, and it's 26 hours long. What book has the right to be 26 hours long? I'm reading at like 1.75 speed. It's taking me days. At this point, like, I'm a little tired of these characters. I feel like the 3rd book is way too long for me. I don't know if I'm gonna continue the series like right away. I think I'm gonna give myself a break. God damn, like 26 hours? I've already read 2 of the books and I have like 2 more to go. Moving on to Divine Rivals. I wanted so much more tension. I'm in the middle of watching Caitlin's chaotic reading vlog where she reads Divine Rivals, and she hit the nail on the head. She was like, I feel like I was bamboozled by the marketing of this book because you saw so much of that academic rivals to lovers aspect. I was really expecting to get a little bit more rivalry, but there's none of that. Even though the book is called Divine Rivals. Overall, I still am happy with how it played out. I really liked the development of Roman and Iris as separate characters, and how they come together to complement each other was really sweet. It was a very good setup to the sequel. Like with that epilogue, I liked it. I gave it a 4 stars. This summer, I have read 5 romances. And again, I think I gravitate towards books that are not necessarily romance heavy. They have a romance subplot. I will fuck with anything with a romance subplot for real. The fact that these are romances, they were all either okay or worse than okay. I read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. Notoriously, I really do enjoy Christina Lauren's romances. Like, I feel like they're all very silly, but I do like their writing. It's a friends to lovers. Hazel meets her college crush like 10 years down the line. Something happens and they are kind of like forced proximity. They fit so well together. So like, why the hell does it take them so long to realize that? I don't know. Well, I gave it a 3 stars. I read You've Reached Sam, which no. The main character is dealing with the grief of Sam's death, but Julie is so hard to empathize for. She's terrible, but I know that she's also like a teenager, so I have to suspend my belief again a little bit more, but at what cost? She doesn't communicate with anyone about how she feels. What the hell? She thinks she's being weak because she can't move on from her boyfriend's death, which happened literally 2 weeks ago. She's like, why am I not over this already? And it's only been 2 weeks. It almost makes Julie come off as very selfish. selfish, which I know is not the author's intention. The whole story just felt really messy. There were too many elements with the supernatural stuff. All ended up feeling very surface level. So I give it 2 stars. And then I read Once More with Feeling, which was an arc. Very disappointing. I feel like the tension between the 2 love interests was told to me rather than shown at all. I couldn't root for the main character at all. She is supposed to be a grown-ass woman. She has no clue how to communicate. She's just living in the past. I also hated how she treated her best friend in this book. So 2 stars. Call it what you want, which was just poorly written. That sounds mean, but there's just no other way around it. The storytelling was not there. Instead of reading a book, I was reading an essay. The only reason why I finished it was because I wanted to see how the author was gonna get us out of it. This girl is hung up on her situationship that lasts for years. The author in her TikToks is very transparent about how it's based on her actual real life experience. If I didn't see the potential for this to actually help real life people like emotionally resonate, I would have been more harsh about it. But at the same time, this is just written really poorly. Dialogue is really bad. There's no prose at all. I gave it 2 stars because I saved 1 star for DNFs, but it was a very close 1 star. The last romance that I read this summer was The Things We Leave Unfinished. This was simply too long. The writing is really good. I just did not need so much of this story. It's 2 timelines. You follow 2 different love stories. There's Georgia and Noah in the present timeline. Flashback to World War II. You're following Georgia's grandmother, Scarlett, and her boyfriend, Jameson. There is a super unexpected twist at the end. I actually DNF'd this book and came back to it like a few weeks later after my Libby hold was available again. And when I DNF'd it, I was like, I honestly feel like I know exactly what's gonna happen. I definitely didn't, but at the same time, it was honestly just so long that I stopped caring for the characters. 4 stars, 3.5. And then we get to the series that I think has took over my brain capacity for the last 2 months, which is the high fantasy series, the Poppy War trilogy. Holy shit. This trilogy truly rips your heart into 2. It was good though. Like I had a good time. You follow our main character, Rin, and she is a girl who comes from poverty but ends up testing into this very elite military academy. You end up meeting Kate, Benka, and Neda, all her classmates, but these kids, they're just kids. They have to grow up way too fast. They end up fighting wars with each other, against each other, and it's so heart-wrenching. You root for her so hard at the beginning of the first book, The Poppy War. By the end of the trilogy, The Burning Guard, she's turned into exactly the person that she hated at the beginning of the story. Oh, there's so much to talk about, like the power dynamics. I thought about these characters when I wasn't reading the story. I will probably still be thinking about these characters years down the line. I strongly suggest that you look into trigger warnings. R.F. Kuang does pull from real historic events like the rape of Nanking, and it's not something that you take lightly at all. It's a very emotionally and mentally exhausting trilogy to read, which is not a good pitch for it, but I think it is one of those stories that stick with you forever. It's stunning, heartbreaking, beautiful. It's just brutal. There's the 3 books, right? And then in the middle, it's like 2.5. There are 15 pages. It's called The Drowning Faith, which is from Neza's point of view. And that just makes this series a 6-star series for me. It just elevates the whole thing, getting a different POV than Rin's. Oh my god. So good. I loved it. I loved it. I feel like the Poppy War was definitely the highlight to my summer, even though the Poppy War is not a light summer read. It's not a beach read. The characters are done so beautifully, so intently. I loved it. Even if you read 1 book, even if you read half a book, I'm proud of you. That's awesome. I hope you have a great rest of your day.